PTSA's Black History is American History Interview with Mr. Thomas Warfield. I'm Alex Powell. I'm a co-liaison at Mendon High School for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I have 2 kids in the Pittsford School District. Now on to our featured guest. Thomas Warfield is an international performing artist. He was born and raised in Rochester and has lived in 6 countries. He's performed from stage to television to film as a dancer, singer, actor, model, composer, choreographer, director, producer, educator, activist, and poet. Thomas has worked with AIDS patients in Thailand, blind students in Taiwan, the homeless in Utah and New York City, inner city youth in North Carolina and Texas, arts and education programs across 41 states. He's worked with directors Spike Lee and Franco Zeffirelli, composers John Adams and Marvin Hamlish, scientist Carl Sagan, singers Placido Domingo, Beverly Sills, and choreographers like Merce Cunningham and Carmen de Lavalade, both who received Kennedy Center Awards, with Carmen receiving the Black History Month Lifetime Achievement Award in 2004. Thomas has danced with professional companies in New York City, Hong Kong, Macau, Stockholm, and London. He has been director of dance at the Department of Performing Arts at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf at RIT for 22 years, and has taught on a variety of subjects, which include dance, choreography, improvisation, piano, voice, drama, poetry, African American studies, self-esteem, anti-racism, and unconscious bias. His global poem in praise of peace has garnered global recognition in letters from composer Leonard Bernstein and Mother Teresa, and hundreds of others. Mr. Warfield's first solo album, Celebrate the Moment, has sold throughout the world and can be found on cdbaby.com and itunes.com. He attributes his passion and blessings in life to the spirit of love. Now, Mr. Warfield, is there anything I've missed that you'd want to highlight about your life's work before we start?
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. There's a lot. You know, I sort of sometimes feel like I've lived 2 or 3 lives already. And sometimes I can't really remember all the things that I've done. I think one of the most interesting things in my life, 2 highlights I think I'll mention. One is I was when I finished college, I went to SUNY Purchase, and when I finished college, I joined a Chinese dance company in Macau. And so I lived in Macau and Hong Kong for quite a long time. And I think those experiences, aside from just the wonderful artistic experience it was, the cultural experience of it was sort of life-changing for me. I think one of the other interesting things in my life was after grad school, where I went to the University of Utah for grad school, I moved to Japan, where I was a dancer in a circus, something like Cirque du Soleil, basically. And so that's also another wonderful artistic endeavor, but it was also a very beautiful cultural experience for me. So those 2 things really do stand out in my own memory in my life. So I'll add those to that long list that you talked about.
Absolutely. Those sound like adventures, and it sounds like a real journey of growth for you across all the different experiences you've had.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. Yeah. And I think that you've touched right on it. You know, for me in my life, it's really been about the growth from experience. I've almost always taken the opportunity in front of me, whether or not I understood it or thought it was the right one, or if it was there, I usually did it when it came to my career or things like that. And so I've never regretted that. I've sort of followed my intuition, you might say, or my heart. And I try not to let my thinking get too clouded, to cloud that up too much when I try to make decisions. And actually, I still do that. I try not to think about it too much. I try to really follow how I feel about something. And, you know, it may not lead to the roads of riches in the sense of monetary riches, but it does lead to an enriched life. And so I think that actually, for me, that's the most important thing. is that my life is enriched, and that way I'm able to enrich others through that. So yeah.
Yeah, you've really trusted yourself with those decisions you've made and gone with what your heart said. That's fabulous. So, as this is Black History Month, we wanted to ask you, who are some of the Black Americans from the past or present that have inspired you on your journey and why?
Well, I think one of the number one inspirations for me is Bayard Rustin. You know, he was a black gay man who was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement. In fact, he was the sort of orchestrator of the 1963 March on Washington. And he really was a teacher, in a sense, for Dr. King on the tools and the experience of nonviolence. And I really studied him at an early age. And I think I was drawn to him in my teenage years when I was in high school. And I read about him a lot and read his writings. And they very impressed me very much. And so I think uh, at that age of 17, 18, 19 years old, you're you're soaking in so much of the world, and it's starting to shape your own ideas and beliefs and perceptions, actually, in a way too. And so I think he was really one of the major influences in my early life, and even today. I keep one of his books in my bedroom, actually. So yeah, Bayard Rustin is definitely one of the top inspirations in my life.
All right. So we'll make sure if people are curious, they should go out and learn more about Bayard Rustin and his role in the civil rights movement in the 60s. Um, I'm curious, since we are talking about your high school years, that part of your development, were there any teachers or mentors during that time that did a lot to support you?
Well, I should probably back up just a little to my grade school years because they somewhat informed the high school years. So I had a grade school music teacher named Geraldine McFadden. I went to World of Inquiry, number 58 school. This was back when it was at the old original place on Moran Street off Genesee Street. Anyway, when I was third grade, I believe, third or fourth grade, she had me singing solos in the school assemblies. And she really encouraged me and you might say pushed me um, to do that every time, every year, every assembly. And I really learned, I mean, at the time, of course, it didn't register, but years later, I understood how it prepared me to be out in front, not just as a performer, as an artist, but as a person um, uh, dedicated or concerned about civic life and my responsibility as a citizen. And so it's really played a role in every area of my life, not just with music and performing, but in almost every area. I can trace back to how I learned about how important it was to stand up in front of people and sort of reveal your truth, which is kind of what performing is about. And so, anyway, she really, Mrs. McFadden, I give her an awful lot of credit, along with my parents, but I give her an awful lot of credit for allowing me to do that and making sure that I did that. When I got to high school, I had a wonderful music teacher. His name was Ed Fleming, who happens to be the father of soprano Renee Fleming. We kind of grew up at the same time, Renee and I. Uh, and we were, I went to East High School, and we didn't have a School of the Arts back then. And so East High was kind of like going to a School of the Arts because we had lots of music, we had lots of theater, we had lots of dance. And so I was really mentored in a sense by my music teacher there, and yeah, I would say that he was a huge influence on me.
It sounds like early on you had teachers that encouraged you to take some of the risks you spoke about early on. Did you feel, were you scared about performing? Was that something that you had that you overcame, or was that something that you'd learned from an early age to push past?
Well, I learned that from an early age. So, I come from a family of performers. My father was a singer and a conductor. He played numerous instruments, and he taught voice and piano in our house. So I, kind of grew up watching him do that. Um, my mom, who was not a musician, but she was the person who got me taking piano lessons at age 4, and every morning at 6 a.m., she was the person who got me up to practice. So, and then my dad's brother is the famous singer William Warfield, that most people know for singing the song "Old Man River" in the movie Showboat, 1950, and he was married to opera soprano Leontine Price. So I kind of grew up in that realm of performing, and I did my first performance in first grade actually when I was a student at Harley School. um, Interesting note about that. When I went to Harley School, I wish I could remember the years, but it's in the 60s. I was born in 62, so I guess it was 67 or something. Um, but anyway, we did a play. I was the only Black student at Harley at that time. So from an early age, I adjusted to the life around me. And so by the time I got really into high school, I don't want to say I was well adjusted, but I knew how to navigate so much already. Um, so I credit that to my parents primarily. Um, but yeah, I was not a shy kid. Well, I shouldn't say that. I suppose I was partly shy, except when I was on stage, and then I wasn't shy at all. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you had obviously some wonderful models of performance that really had you feel that you belonged, and that that's a great base, to move you forward into the world.
It also, if I could say also, um, when I think about my childhood, it also impressed on me when I became a teacher how important that not molding the student so much, but um, allowing the student that sort of space and creating an environment of learning for that student that they want to soak up as much as possible. So in my classes, even though I'm teaching dance, I'm really teaching about how to learn. I think that's, for me, that's really one of the most vital um, tools about life, is that you are always learning something. Uh, it keeps your mind fresh, for one, but it's like rejuvenating your cells in a way, because if you stay in the same track and the same thing over and over, it can become sort of routine, and you can kind of get stuck in doing the same thing and not even understanding what you're doing. So to have a fresh eye, I think this is why I traveled so much as a young person. I was so interested in seeing the world and in experiencing things, um, that I wanted to keep doing that. And that really does translate into how I teach, because I'm not trying to give students so much about the information. They can look up the information. I want to give them, help them to develop a spirit of wanting to learn and wanting to know more and wanting to grow. I think that that is my gift as an educator.
Well, you certainly have a number of gifts, so thank you for sharing with us your gift as an educator as well. So, for those students that are listening, especially those students of color that may be interested in going into the arts, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say prepare yourself for the opportunities that come your way. A lot of people tell me I'm lucky, but I don't think it has to do so much with luck. It has to do with that I was prepared for the opportunity that came my way. So, what I mean by that is if you're a singer, you need to work on your voice so that you know how to sing, you know how to use your voice. If you're a dancer, you need to get your instrument, which is your body, in a shape, into shape to be able to dance, to understand um, what it is your body can do and how to do it. So that's what I mean about being ready for the opportunity. If you want to be, well, it doesn't even have to be dance or music, it could be any occupation, that you really prepare yourself to be ready to do it. And so I would say that that's maybe the main thing is work hard, prepare yourself, learn, 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 learn. That's I can't emphasize that enough. You can always be learning. And the other thing I would say is say yes. Try to follow your heart, what you feel inside. Try not to overthink what you should be doing. Granted, you do have to have some thought about what you're doing, but oftentimes we talk ourselves out of trying new things. Um, if I had listened to my thinking, rational self, I probably wouldn't have moved to Hong Kong, or any other place. Um, but I didn't. It felt like an adventure, and so I wanted to have that. So I would say yes, follow your heart, work very hard. Don't stop. There's never a time as an artist, anyway, that you don't work. And work by work, I mean that you don't work on yourself. You don't. There's never a time that you don't work on yourself. You are always developing, growing, evolving into the next phase of who you are. So that's what I would say.
Well, that is very inspiring. You have me totally jazzed up to think about what I am going to do this evening
Good.
to help me grow and develop. So thank you. Thank you so much on behalf of the PTSA and the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Group. Thank you so much on behalf of the Pittsford School District and for contributing to our Black History is American History archive of interviews.
You're welcome. You're so welcome. It's my pleasure. One time I was fortunate enough to have lunch with Leonard Bernstein, and one of the things he said to me, well, two things that I took away from, well, there's so many things I took away from that lunch, but two things that stood out. One, that man was so curious about every little thing. We were sitting in a cafe just outside Lincoln Center, and every time somebody walked by, he had a little like, I wonder where they bought that. He says, well, look at the way that woman holds every little thing. He was curious about everything. It was hard to have a conversation, actually, because he was constantly, which is sort of, I'm a little like that too. But then he said something else to me, though, that was very interesting. He said to me, the artist is the person who has the vision for society and moves society forward. That's your job. And when he said it, I was reminded of a scripture in Proverbs. I believe it's Proverbs 18 or 17. And it says something like, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I thought, wow, that is exactly the directive at that time in my life, because I was kind of trying to decide what to do next. I had just moved back to New York from Hong Kong. I was thinking about going to grad school and what should I do, and it was so clear when he said that. It was just, and my life that was like a little seed, and it has sprung from there ever since.
Yeah.
I'm just very curious about things. And so my curiosity leads me somewhere, whatever's in front of me. That's what I mean about everything's an opportunity. It's just how you approach it. And if you're ready, then it doesn't matter that it's not what you're looking for. There's many times in life that we're doing the things we don't want to do. So don't get stuck on that, because you're doing something you don't want to do, but it can lead you to what you want to do. And that's the view you've got to take. It's not easy to get there. It takes practice. And so with the little things every day, you've got to practice that. How do I turn? Oh gosh, this happened. Oh, this spilt. How am I going to? Well, that's an opportunity for you to learn how to deal with something that you didn't, expect, something that was maybe maybe that's not good, but now you can figure out how to deal with it. So that little spill of something that ruined your tablecloth or whatever, that's an opportunity for you to learn how to deal with the bigger spills that come. They'll
Amazing.
come later.